In my last video, I talked about the importance of creating a solid foundation of behaviors and habits so that you can create the most supportive environment in order to have the most sustainable long-term success as possible. Because it can be easy to add all these changes all at once and eventually get burnt out because there's too much stuff happening all at once. So once you create a solid foundation and you feel like you have pretty good control over that, now is a good time to start implementing some of the strategies that I'll talk about in this video. And that process could take a few weeks to a month in my mind, because even it taking on the longer end a month over a few weeks is okay. Because if you look at this whole process as occurring over years and for the rest of your life, a month is nothing. So take as much time as you can before moving on to implementing more habits on top of the ones that you're already creating or the ones that you've already implemented but now are trying to sustain. First, I want to start with the importance of nutrition and the role that it's going to play in changing your body composition. Because exercise is important and it's necessary, but it's not going to be as great of a driver of change as your nutrition will be. And instead of making all these changes at first or cutting all these calories, because especially if you're trying to lose weight, we all know that being in a calorie deficit, which means burning more than what you're consuming by the end of the day, is the key to weight loss, or at least a very big driver of that. Now, going back to the foundational behaviors, creating an environment of being as stress-free as possible, or managing the stress within your body as best as you can to recover properly, and all these other things are also going to have a big effect, which is why that's in the foundational phase. Because you can be in a calorie deficit and exercise and do all these things, but if your body is just perpetually in a stressed out state, right, and there's a lot of cortisol running through your system, that is counterintuitive to weight loss, and it makes it harder as well. Again, that's why we want to think about going through these phases of change so that we can optimize the things that are important right now before adding on the next piece. So when it comes to that, as I said, exercise is important and it's necessary, but that's also causing stress. And the nutritional component and the nutritional factor is the most important. And again, without making any changes, the best thing you can start with is becoming aware of what your natural inclinations are when it comes to eating patterns, what foods you normally gravitate to, all of that, so that you can get a better understanding of what the average number of calories you're consuming on a daily basis is. And for the most part, what is the percentage of those calories coming from in regards to the macronutrients? So if you eat, let's just say 2,000 calories a day, what percentage of those calories are coming from protein? What percentage are coming from carbs? And what percentage are coming from fats? Just knowing that and being aware of that is going to help you not only in the moment, but in the future when it comes to making the necessary changes to help continue spur along that progress and those results. Most of the time, just the awareness is key, because we don't realize how little or how much calories we're eating unless we look at it. And I've had this conversation many times with people I've worked with where they think they're eating a certain way, but after we talk and they go back home and they actually track it and put it down and realize, oh man, I didn't realize I was eating so many carbs. And this is especially true when it comes to people who are pre-diabetic or diabetic, in which that influences a lot of things in their life when it comes to their blood sugar and their health. And so by not knowing how many carbs they were actually eating, or thinking they were eating in a healthy or more beneficial way than they thought, is really eye-opening. And so it doesn't mean that they have to make all those changes right at once, but again, if they see those trends over time, it's a lot easier to have a bigger 1,000-foot view perspective of what those dietary habits are. And it gives you more control when it comes to times of change to have a better understanding of what exactly needs to be switched, what can be cut back, and what could be added. And I would suggest doing this for a couple weeks just to get, again, that understanding of what an average day looks like before cutting any calories, because maybe you'll need to add calories, and maybe you'll need to add calories in the form of more protein, because a higher protein diet is beneficial not only for muscle gain but also weight loss in the terms of burning fat. And so you could have weight loss, but in what I would term a more negative way, which is you're losing fat and losing muscle. The ultimate goal is to be building muscle and burning fat so that the change in body composition is done in a healthier way, because having more muscle is going to increase longevity and lifespan as a whole. Next, when it comes to exercise, take the same approach. Don't worry about adding all this additional activity or trips to the gym at first. You can start with where you're at by just increasing the amount of steps you're taking on a daily basis. So before adding intensity, you can just add duration. And so walking is a low intensity activity, but by increasing the amount of steps that you're taking or increasing the amount of time you're walking, and by doing that intentionally, you could help create an extra calorie burn effect by just increasing the amount of physical activity you're performing on a daily basis without adding any extra stress physiologically or psychologically, because there are a lot of very beneficial psychological effects to just taking a walk every day as well. And so after doing that for a couple weeks, like you're doing with the diet and nutrition, you can get a better understanding of what times throughout the week would be best for you to add some extra intensity to those physical activity sessions, or those exercise sections, which I refer to as exercise or physical activity, because really at the end of the day, that's all we're going for, is moving our body. But doing that and applying resistance is going to be the most beneficial. So adding weights, whether it's external weights by dumbbells, barbells, whatever the case may be, or just starting with your body weight, doing body weight squats or lunges, if you can do push-ups, things like that, so that you're putting resistance on your muscle and giving them a reason to grow and stimulating them to grow, which is also going to have a positive effect on your metabolism after the fact. It's not a huge increase, but again, it's something. And the more muscle that you can build and put on your body is just going to help create this positive cycle of essentially like a rich get richer. I always think about it that way. When they talk about building wealth, having money makes making more money easier. So the same thing is true with exercise in regards to fat loss, because the more muscle you have is going to make everything else easier. And it'll also even help the nutrition easier, because you can get away with having a little bit more calories because your body is actually going to need them just to sustain the amount of muscle that you put on. And so once you get into a good routine of just walking more, and maybe even starting with 1 to 2 days a week where you're adding resistance, once that becomes a habit and you're in a good routine, then you can start adding more. So again, just like the last phase, after a few weeks to months, when you feel like you have control over these behaviors and habits, and it's a little more second nature rather than having to really focus on it and pre-plan a whole lot. Once that routine is in place, then you could add that additional psychological demand to plan ahead and fit in some extra workouts will be easier, because everything else is kind of running its course already. And this way too, again, you're just managing the amount of stress that you're placing on your body while making these subtle changes that are going to have long-term effects when you keep with it. Because again, the longer you stay in the game, the more results that you're going to get. So don't worry about rushing into doing too much overly intense physical activity and exercise at first, because it's not, you're getting, the most results that you're going to get are going to occur in the first 6 months anyway. So if you can do as little as you can and get the most benefit, that's what you want. And then over time, after the 6 months, a year, when results naturally start coming more slowly, that's when you can start thinking about pushing yourself and working harder. But in the beginning, it's not as important. It's just starting where you're at and moving slowly but efficiently. And finally, if you'd like more information regarding calories, carbs, fats, proteins, I'll add that in the description. If you made it this far, thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.